It's 852 here in New York. I We understand that there has been a plane crash on the southern tip of Manhattan. That there, dan, 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 patented, 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 You re-looking at the World Trade Center. We understand that a plane has crashed into the World Trade Center. We don't know anything more than that. We don't know if it was a so when this episode won the last poll for pick a historical event. I was honestly kind of hoping 9-11 would win because I had really seen a retrospective on how 9-11 has been depicted in the media over the last 15 years. And yes, it has been 15 years. And I wasn't really taking into account one very important element that is a part of this show, that being the cultural elements that go into what shapes the media in question. And if you give it more than a passing thought, it's like thousands of people died and it led to the longest war in American history that we still in. It's kind of a bummer. So this ended up being a lot more difficult than I thought it would be, trying to connect the dots of the media depictions of this incident that defies words. It was difficult, but I'm going to try. Keyword tree. So before we get into it, know that there will be lots of images depicting the destruction of the World Trade Center and its periphery. And also acknowledgement, especially as a New Yorker, that this was a real thing that happened recently. It is, as of this taping, the most destructive act of terrorism and one of the most devastating losses of life to have ever taken place on American soil. So let me start by saying I don't know what your reaction is when the topic or image of 9/11 is mentioned. It could be grief, it could be indifference, it could be a conviction that jet fuel can't melt steel beams, and if you read anything like me, blinding white-hot rage, that phrase is even still a thing that people take seriously. We all come into this with different perspectives, different degrees of intimacy to the tragedy, from actual loss of a family member in the attacks to no reaction at all. So while there is some goofy stuff in these two episodes, because there have been some goofo depictions of 9/11, this will be more on the serious business end. Ground Zero is literally 5 miles away from where I am sitting right now. Any world event can influence media trends, but few influence mainstream media in quite the way that 9/11 did. Not only did it change the topics we were willing to tackle, but also the aesthetic. There's a particular awkwardness watching Armageddon now, not just because of how it visually mirrors what happened, but how it doesn't. We all know now that that's not what skyscrapers look like when they fall. Like a way, well, it basically killed the public's appetite to see images of wholesale destruction for several years. So before we actually get into the media part, I want to talk a little bit about collective trauma, which is exactly what it sounds like. It is trauma that affects groups, often by proxy. For instance, the Holocaust to the Jewish people, or the Armenian genocide to the Armenian diaspora, and 9/11 to Americans, which is the most pronounced instance of collective trauma since Pearl Harbor. There was a study released in 2008 concluding that in the days following the attacks, nearly half of Americans reported symptoms of post-traumatic stress, and many of these symptoms remained elevated in the following weeks and months. But there was no one uniform way that these post-traumatic symptoms actually manifested. The study identified reactions of anger and political intolerance, gratitude and spirituality, and even changes in patterns of normal language use, social behavior, cognitive processing. So you can't say that 9/11 made us all of a sudden more xenophobic, or more inclusive, or united, or uniformly more anything, because it's not that simple. The trauma is collective. Yes, but the coping mechanisms are all over the place. But you can say that the events did trigger a search for attributional meaning. And that's where media depictions come in, because that is the point of art and media. It is the only thing we have to help us make sense of our existence. According to another study, the sense that one has actually found meaning in the event is correlated with lower post-traumatic stress, and the media that we as a culture create and consume is an integral part of that process. So it is time to go back in time. All the way back to September 11th, 2001. The most devastating terrorist attack in modern history. What happens next? Well, of course, first we have to hastily re-edit things that were already done to fit this radically changed new world. After all, a ton of movies and shows take place in New York and are filmed in New York, and we are now in a world where there are no Twin Towers anymore. That's awkward. There was a scene in the original Spider-Man trailer showing a helicopter caught in a web between the Twin Towers, and well, that got deleted. The World Trade Center was digitally removed from films like Zoolander, Serendipity, and Kissing Jessica Steen. And scenes from Spy Game, The Time Machine, and The Bourne Identity were edited because of their visual resemblance to the wreckage of the towers. The latter extensively so due to terrorism as a major part of the storyline. Men in Black 2 originally featured a climax that included the World Trade Center, and the final version has changed to the Statue of Liberty. The original ending of Lilo and Stitch featured this. Hold on. And this ending, which was already mostly animated by 9/11, was reanimated to change the city's skyline to mountains and 747 to something more alien-y. Stitch did 9/11. Meanwhile, on television, the opening credits of shows like The Sopranos and Law and Order SVU were edited to remove the Twin Towers. There was also an episode of Friends where Chandler and Monica could not get on their flight for their honeymoon because Chandler joked about a bomb in the airport. Look at that. Federal law prohibits any joking regarding aircraft hijacking or bombing. You don't have to worry about me, ma'am. I take my bombs very seriously. Sir, you want to come with us? And that scene got rewritten and reshot. Even shows like Power Rangers, Pokemon, Transformers, Robots in Disguise, and Invaderism had episodes taken off the air. Invaderism had other series edits too, like, well, changing this scene. All that you know and love lies in ruins. and also changing the colors of explosions in other episodes to make them more cartoony looking. And during this period of hasty edits came also a period of this. We'd be here all day if we ran through even a decent sampling of the heartfelt tribute songs. Here is what the Wikipedia page on the subject of songs about 9:11 looks like. But there was a certain genre in particular that was fond of the heartfelt tribute. Yes, before the days of Florida Georgia Line, when we sang about trucks and girls in America, it was a different, more sincere time, where we sang about trucks and girls in America, but, more angry. As far as mainstream music that happened in that first couple of years, it tended to fall into three categories. Jingoistic bro country. And it's gonna be hell when you hear Mother Freedom start a-ragging her bell. When you hear Mother Freedom a-gang, or Sad bro country. Where were you when the world stopped turning? That September day. And a sprinkling of dipshit trutherism. Why do people push pounds and powder? Why did Bush knock down the towers? Ye. Why did Bush knock down the towers? Because the Illuminati told him to. Do. And if you re wondering why the comments on this air disabled, that crowd is why. But after the initial reaction, we had enough time to start incorporating it into fictionalized narratives, and that's where it starts to get really interesting. One of the first to address it, of course, was South Park in the episode Osama bin Laden has farty pants. Remember when life used to be simple and cool? Not really. Which aired about 8 weeks after the attacks, and it hasn't gone down as a classic in no small part because it feels like it was written in about an hour. Skipping addressing the event itself, the plot deals almost entirely with the invasion of Afghanistan, as well as paradising the fear the media was pushing at the time. Hey Sharon, maybe you should stop watching the news for a little bit. Sharon, you've been watching King for about 8 weeks now. Don't you want to watch something else? It's totally different from today. Ramadan. Hey look, an infidel. Yet it devotes almost the entire second half of the episode to Cartman and Bin Laden in a sort of Bugs Bunny and Elmer Fudd teat-a-teat. They still digging through the rubble, but yeah, tenny pennis if that makes you feel better. Okay. And yet it ends with such a sincere, actually patriotic affirmation. America may have some problems, but it's our home, our team. And if you don't want to root for your team, then you should get the hell out of the stadium. See, even Matt Stone and Trey Parker were kind of going for some sort of catharsis. In this case, by making Bin Laden look like a harmless buffoon with octony penis. That all show him. But, despite ragging on America, revoing loyalty to it. Go America. Go America. 9-11 was a recurring South Park topic. The aforementioned country songs were parodied in a ladder to Haven the following year. Now he's here once again to capitalize on people's emotions. See, when country stars sing about the thing. Waits shamelessly capitalizing on the thing, which is totally different from when comedians do it. Yeah. 9-11. In season 10, the episode Mystery of the Urinal Deuce, they take on 9-11 conspiracy theories. And this one is easily the strongest of the group, probably because it wasn't written in an hour. All I had to do was have explosives planted in the base of the towers. Then on 9-11, we pretended like 4 planes were being hijacked, and really, we just rewrited them to Pennsylvania, then flew 2 military jets in the World Trade Center filled with more explosives, and shot down all the witnesses in Flight 93 within F-15 after blowing up the Pentagon with a cruise missile. It was only the world's most intricate, flawlessly executed plan ever. Really. On the complete other end of the spectrum, you have the West Wing episode Isaac and Ishmael. It was also one of the first scripted series to respond to the attacks, featuring the aftermath of a nondescript similar attack that takes place in this universe, albeit a non-canon attack, apparently. It was written and filmed within 2 weeks of 9/11. Sorkin himself wrote this one, and it has a lot of Sorkin-esque rhetorical devices. I don't know about Irving Berlin, but your ridiculous search for rational reasons why somebody straps a bomb to their chest is ridiculous. You just called me ridiculous twice in one sentence. Hardly a record for me. People really liked it at the time because of the characters speaking in this authoritative, hopeful way, but it has not really aged well. So why is everybody trying to kill us? Not everybody. It seems like everybody. It's just the Arabs. Saying the Arabs is too general. Not only do terrorists always fail at what they re-after, they pretty much always succeed in strengthening whatever it is they re-against. Oh, no. And this is also the problem with spitting something out like this so fast. In the end, it has a very quick, say something-ness to it. Don't you consider this something noble about being a martyr? Bartlett's over here like, is this kid Devils advocating 9/11. We don't need martyrs right now. We need heroes. In December of that year, Marvel decided to put their take in an issue of The Amazing Spider-Man called The Black Issue, and it starts, I agree, Spider-Man. Must we? It's all about coming together against the greater adversity of terrorism. Even the supervillains put aside their differences. Really. Yeah, it was a different time. A different. So a couple years pass, and by now we've had enough time to write 9/11 into some movies. One of the first and easily the strongest film in this entire list is Spike Lee's 25th Hour. And part of what makes it so strong is the fact that 9/11 is a prominent backdrop in the story. But the film isn't really about 9/11. Fuck Osama bin Laden, Al-Qaeda, and backward-ass cave-dwelling fundamentalist shoals everywhere. On the names of innocent thousands murdered, I pray you spend the rest of eternity with your 72 cores roasting in a jet-fueled fire in hell. It was in production in 2001, and you do get the impression that it was hastily rewritten to include this backdrop. But in the end, that sort of cognitive dissonance fits in really well with the narrative proper, especially the scene where Monty goes on his tirade about how much he hates every aspect of New York. Fuck this whole city and everyone in it. From the row houses of Astoria to the penthouses on Park Avenue. From the projects in the Bronx to the lofts in Soho. But the way it's a shot captures such conflicting emotions, which is a common response after any kind of trauma. Let an earthquake crumble it. Let the fires rage. Let that let it burn to fucking ash, and then let the waters rise and submerge this whole rat-infested place. Barry Pepper, who plays his friend, actually lives in this apartment downtown which overlooks Ground Zero. The New York Times says the air's bad down here. Oh yeah. Well, fuck the Times. I read the Post. And he brushes this fact off like it's no big deal. Meanwhile, Philip Seymour Hoffman's characters like, maybe this isn't a good idea. All three characters reflecting different emotional responses to trauma, running the gamut. Denial, worry, and anger. Fuck the corrupt cops with their anus-violating plungers and their 41 shots standing behind a blue wall of silence. You betray our trust. So 25th Hour is great, but it goes downhill pretty quickly from there. One of the more bizarre relics from this era is a made-for-television Showtime drama called -11, Time of Crisis. Made in that brief period of time before Bush and Cheney were generally regarded as two of history's greatest monsters. You wanted the job. Maybe this is why. This one reenacts the events of 9/11 from the point of George Bush and how hard it was for him, present intenting. And it is staggeringly boring when it doesn't feel like a parody wrapped in a dream. Some passengers on cell phones figured out what was happening and they took matters into their own hands. God bless their souls. Take, for instance, this sensitive scene between Bush and Cheney. I'm gonna need you at me side at all times. Go and see the urn. Main thrust, Dick, is to protect the line of succession. It was a different time. A similar made-for-it movie starring James Woods was made about Rudy Giuliani for User Network around the same time. It was called Rudy, the Rudy Giuliani story. And, well, it's more watchable than the 9/11, Time of Crisis. This is New York City. I love this city, despite mostly having nothing to do with 9/11, except for, hey, look, he was mayor when it happened. This is mayor when and hey. And Yes, before James Woods was suing lazy Twitter users who called him a cocaine addict. He was doing feature-length campaign ads for Rudy 2008. Okay, got it. All New Yorkers together. And ne'er a more starry-eyed campaign ad could Rudy have wished for. What have these bastards done to me city? God, how we love this city. Most of it's actually about Rudy. Life building up to 9-11 and spends a weird amount of time on his infidelities, and most of it ends up being about Giuliani Swimmins. In a weird way, it accidentally cops to the fact that 9-11 was the greatest career boost Giuliani could have ever hoped for. And then there's Jingoism for Kids. Tudor Cruise was a Disney Channel original movie starring Hayden Panettiere and Bill Pullman, which intertwines a fictional storyline about a Navy admiral who gets to take his daughter on a family-based Tudor cruise where his kids get to see what this Navy business is all about. How many elementary schools did I go to? Oh, Maddie, come on. Hayden is tired of being a Navy brat, see, and wants to talk her dad out of military life, and eventually he's like, okay, honey, I decided I'm not gonna re-up. But then 9/11 happens. Until we know the full extent and nature of these attacks, we're gonna assume the worst and stay on full alert. Then, when the serious thing happens, it's not a huge deal. Nothing waving a big ol' American flag won't fix. There are even two characters who lose a family member at the Pentagon, but, you know, they handle it pretty well. Listen, I am sorry about your uncle. Thanks. It helps to keep busy, you know. In fairness to this thing, it is the rare dad you need to work less and spend more time with your family movie that ends with actually, never mind. You do your damn job to dad. I think you should keep doing what you redoing. 5 years out from 9/11, we started to see higher profile and higher budget feature films that were true stories not about political figures, but about people who were actually there, and the most well-known came out pretty close to each other. The first was Oliver Stone's World Trade Center. See, you gotta talk to me, because and there were concerns before it came out, with Oliver Stone directing it and Oliver Stone having been prone to truthiness in the past. Ahem. And by 2006, 9/11 truthiness was really catching on, especially in light of the 9/11 Commission report. But Stone held back on his truthiness, and mostly it's just boring. Although the intro does remind me of Armageddon. I want to go shopping. Me too. It's mostly a trapped in a hole movie, with the towers falling about 20 minutes in, and Nicolas Cage and Michael P. being trapped under the rubble for 2 hours with not but Nicolas Cage's. I think that's supposed to be a New York accent. Every wife, I feel the pain less, but I'm more numb. By I mile, my the more the saying. And eventually they get dug out. I'd call it dull and inoffensive, but while some of the families of the men portrayed in the movie is signed off, others, namely family members of the dead portrayed in the film, weren't too thrilled. And you could call this the apex of capitalizing on tragedy, but we read nowhere near done yet. Paul Greengrass took a more Paul Greengrass approach to his take on the passengers of United 93 retaliating against the hijackers in United 93. This is a suicide mission. We have to do something. At the time, Greengrass was best known for the Irish film Bloody Sunday and the Bourne Supremacy, so the Greengrass approach was shaky cameras, lots and lots of natural-looking lighting, and minimal score. Unlike World Trade Center, United 93 had no name actors, lending to its legitimacy, and since it was trying to be an overlong sincere snooze fest, it was the stronger of the two, but, it wasn't that great. The further away we get from 9-11, the less people quite know what to do with it. Hollywood had gotten the serious topical movies out of its system, and that didn't really work. Nobody really wanted it, and yet it was inevitable. And after neither of those two movies were award-season darlings, Hollywood kind of backed off from movies about 9-11 for a while. Although that was hardly the end of it. See, Americans in general are really turned off by the idea of capitalizing on this tragedy anyway. Even though it's kind of impossible not to capitalize on it. Like, I'm capitalizing on it right now. No matter how solemn or respectful or irreverent or disrespectful, that's all a form of capitalizing on it, because it's an inescapable thing. Our world is shaped by it. Everything from the Patriot Act to the Snowden leaks to the Syrian refugee crisis and even Brexit. All of these things came at least as a partial fallout of the way 9/11 affected the world. So, while you might think I've hit all of the obvious horns, this topic runs pretty deep, and we've got a long way to go.